All right. Good morning, everybody. 78b, the Mishnah, about 7 lines from the bottom. So continuing to talk about the carbon toda, that comes with a keva, a lamb, and various types of lechem, of bread. Shchata chutz lizmano chutz limkama. What if you did the shchita of the lamb in an improper way of pigul, either thinking that you're going to eat it outside the bounds of its proper time or place? So of course the shchita, the carbon becomes pigul. So but kadosh alechem, Mishnah says the bread still becomes kadosh. Of course, it's also pigul, but what it's telling you is that the fact that you messed up the shchita, it's still valid in the sense that this is a carbon, and so all the associated parts, including the bread, are kadosh, and it's an invalid carbon, so you can't, you have to abide by the rules of people. Shchata v'nim says trefa. What if you did the shchita and then you found out that this was an animal that wasn't qualified, right? It was trefa, meaning it was, there are various things that make an animal trefa, but let's say had some condition that it couldn't have lived anyway. So that's not a valid shchita. Lo kadosh halacha. Then nothing becomes kadosh. Shchata v'nim says balasmum. What if you did the shchita and then you found that it had some internal defect, not a fatal one, but it's not suitable for the mizbeach? Rabbi Elazar Omer Kiddush. Rabbi Elazar says that the shchita does make the carbon kadosh and the bread is thereby kadosh. V'chamim lo kiddush. And the rabbis say no. Shchata shelo lishma. What if you do the shchita with the wrong intention, like for the wrong person or something like that? V'chein elam miluim v'chein shnei kifsei atzeres shechatan shelo lishman. Or the same applies to the initiation korban, or the two lambs of Shavuos, and you did them for the wrong purpose. Lo kadosh alechem, then it's not a valid korban at all. And the bread does not become kadosh. And okay, Masnisi Mani. Now, who's the anonymous voice in the Mishnah? Rabbi Meir. Titania. This is a rule. If the invalidation precedes the shchita lo kadosh alechem, then the shchita is not meaningful, and the bread does not become kadosh by virtue of the shchita. Pisul achar shchita, but if the disqualification came about after the shchita, kadosh alechem, then the shchita was good, the bread became kadosh, and then it becomes pasul. So if you do the shchita in the wrong place or with the thought of the wrong place or the wrong time, so kadosh halechem, then the bread does become kadosh. Shchata v'nim says trefa, but if you find that it's a trefa, so the defect actually had already occurred. Lo kadosh halechem. Like, even though you only found out about it later, but it occurred before the shchita, so the shchita was never valid, and the bread does not become kadosh. Shchata v'nim says balas mum, and what if you find that it has a mum? Rabbi Elazar omer kadosh. Rabbi Elazar says it is kadosh. Rabbi Yeshua omer lo kadosh. Rabbi Yeshua says no. Give Rabbi Meir. That's what Rabbi Meir says. That's our Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda lo nechku Rabbi Elazar v'Rabbi Yeshua al shchata v'nim says treifa shelo kadosh. Rabbi Yehuda says Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Yeshua both agree that if you find after the shchita that it's an invalid animal, that is treifa, lo kadosh, then the shchita was not effective. The bread does not become kadosh. Ve'al chutz lismano, and they both agreed that if you had a thought of chutz lismano or presumably chutz limkomo shekadosh, that does become kadosh. The Vial Balmum Shalom Karash, and also about the Balmum when you found that it has a mum that happened before the Shchita Lo Karash. What's the argument about Al Chutz Limkomo? If you have the thought that you're going to do it not outside of its time but outside of its place, Rabbi Elazar Omer Karash, Rabbi Yeshua Omer Lo Karash. That's where they differ. Rabbi Elazar, what's Rabbi Elazar's reason? Ho v'chutz l'zman apostle v'chutz limkom apostle. The same rule, right? If you have the thought, like we usually lump them together, in terms of the rules about them. The consequences are a little different, but we usually lump them together in terms of the conditions. So they're both machus lizman kalash, achus limkom kalash. So we're going to apply the same rule. Just as chutz lizman, if you have the thought to eat it in the wrong time, then the shchita is still good. And then it becomes pigul. Same we're going to say if you had the thought of eating it outside of its place. Rabbi Yeshua says, "Hold chuslim kama pasul bal mum pasul." Since we're going to link it not to chutz lismano but to bal mum. Those are both pasul. They don't have kares, right? Chutz lismano has kares, but chuslim kama doesn't have kares. So we'll compare those two. Ma balmum lo kadash lo kadash af chutzim kama lo kadash. So just as the balmum, the shchita becomes invalid to begin with, and so the bread doesn't become kadash. We'll say the same thing about the thought, doing the shchita with the thought of chutzlim kama. Amar Rav Elazar, as Rav Elazar would say to him, ani demisi chutzlim ano ata demisi lebalmum. All right, so we each have our parallels that we're trying to apply the rule to. Near Lamidama. Let's see who's got a closer analogy. If it's more similar to my case, the chutz lismano, that you thought about eating it outside of its proper time, if I can show you that chutz limkomo is more similar to that than to balmum, then you'll have to agree with me. If you're right, then you're right. If you can demonstrate to me that it's closer to a balmum, then I'll agree with you. Hisler Rosler Dun, so Rosler started to analyze. Danin Pasul Machshava and Pasul Machshava. They're both Chusli Zman and Chuslim Kamo are similar because it's a thought, right? It's like it's not an action or it's not a physical reality, but it's something that you think in your mind when you're doing the Shrita. They're both similar. It's not similar to Balmum because a Balmum is a physical phenomenon, and the Chutzli Mkomo is a mental phenomenon. His Rabbi Yeshua approached it from a different way. Done in Pesul Shein Bokaris, Pesul Shein Bokaris. Yeah, like I said before, Chutzli Zmano is an Easter Karis. The punishment is Karis. Chutzli Mkomo is not Karis. It's just a love. Same like sacrificing a balmum. So it's more close to a balmum. Ve'al Chutzli Zmano Shepsul Sheish Bokaris. And let's not compare it to what you say, Rabbi Lazar, which is compare it to the thought of eating it outside of its time, but that's kares, so let's not compare it to that. And also nidunenu mishalov lishmo. I could also say it's closer to the shalov lishmo case where you do the shchita with the wrong intention. Shapsul machshava. It's also a mental, a thought activity. But just like Rabbi Lazar, didn't respond. So Rabbi Meir, according to Rabbi Meir, Maishna Shchata V'nim says Treifa, de have psula kodem shchita. Now let's look at a little more closely, right? If you find that it's a treifa, so that you're saying, oh, it was always a treifa. Um, um, it was always a treifa. You just discovered it after the shchita. So, but what about Maishna Shchata V'nim says Balas Mum de have psula kodem shchita? The Balmum should be the same. One second. Yeah, so like you could look at this both ways, okay? But what the current view is that you find something, the like if you find it that it has a mum, one second. Yeah, why would you make a distinction between Balmum and Treifa? They're both things that probably occurred before the Shita. So our answer is Bedokin Shabayan. What are we talking about? Cataracts. Valiva Rabbi Kiva. And following the opinion of Rabbi Kiva, the Amar im alu lo yerdu. That yeah, it's a blemish, it's a mum to have these cataracts, but if it already went up onto the mizbeach, it's not that bad of a blemish. You could still burn it on the mizbeach, according to Rabbi Akiva. So there is some validity to the carbon, which is not the case with treifa. Treifa is completely invalid. If you took if you took the treifa meat up to the mizbeach, you wouldn't put it on the mizbeach. You take it back down. Rabbi Yeshua, what's Rabbi Yeshua's opinion? Kiyama Rabbi Akiva, imol lo yerdu. When did Rabbi Akiva say that? Bipsula de gufe. That's the if the invalidation is the carbon itself. All right, so Rabbi Akiva can apply that to the meat because the meat went on the mizbeach. But we're talking about what are we going to do with the bread, right? The bread never went on the mizbeach. The bread, sure, the meat you're going to b'diavad say, all right, burn it on the mizbeach, but that doesn't mean you should say the same thing about the bread because the bread never never got into that situation where it got onto the mizbeach. Okay. Itmar, chatas or shchata chutz lizman. If you have a chatas and you did the shchita with the thought of doing it um, of eating it beyond the right time. Imal solitaire. If so, it's people. But if you do take it up to the mizbeach, don't take it down again. You should burn it there. Chutzim koma. But if it's if your thought was to eat it outside the right place, Rav Amar terid, Rav Amar lo terid. We have machlokas Rav and Rava whether it should burn on the mizbeach or be taken down. Rava, Rabbi Yeshua. So Rava holds like Rabbi Yeshua says they're equivalent, like Chus Mana, Chus Kama. We apply the same rule for Rabbi Eliezer, and Rabbi holds like Rabbi Eliezer that says that they're different, and then and the Chus Kama should be compared to a different case. But Rabba changed his mind. He gave in to Rabba. We saw before that Rabbi Eliezer stopped arguing. Right? He didn't have a response to Rabbi Yeshua's argument, so we can assume that Rabba, who sided with Rabbi Eliezer, also later changed his mind and gave in. Some read it this way: Rabbi Eliezer, Yeshua, even though Rabbi Eliezer gave in to Rabbi Yeshua, Rabba didn't buy it. Right? He's stuck with his guns. Why Hassam, who in the case of the Toda with Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Yeshua, the Kamarle Nidunanu Mishaloli Shmo, because Rabbi Yeshua said to him, "Look, we have a good test, a good parallel case of Shalol Lishma, when you do the shechita for the wrong person. So there is something else to compare it to. Aval in the case of of should you leave the thing if imol liered or not, idayent le mishalol lishmo. So what are you going to compare it to? What are the other possible cases? Shalol lishmo. Imal solitaire. Then actually the law for that is the rule for that is that don't take it and burn it on the mizbeach. So Rabbah, says there's no other. You can't win the argument by saying there's another case to compare it to with a different rule. That's not so here. Okay. Shlato shlolishma. What if you did the shita for the wrong person? And then we applied that also to the lambs of Shavuos and the Miluim. Amar of Papa, Shavak Tanadidan El Nazir, the Shliach V'nakid El Miluim. He finds it surprising that why didn't you mention the korban of a Nazir? That's more frequent. That comes more frequently because the Miluim was a one-time thing, right? That was the initiation of the Mishkan. Never happened again. But the Nazir is Ladoros. Nazir happens all the time. Anytime somebody's a Nazir, he has to bring this korban. So why didn't he mentioned in the Mishnah the case of the Nazir, the Tandidan Ikar Milsa Nakat, because he's talking about the original, right? It's the original place where bread was sacrificed. It was the Miluim, even though it never repeated. That's the one he chose to include. Next Mishnah, Hanusachi. Shakaju b'kli, the name says zevach pasul. You have the nesachim, the libations, right? That that accompany the korban. You pour them into the kli shari, so they're kadosh, and then the animal turns out to be pasul. So what do you do with the nesachim? If there's another sacrifice available that needs nesachim, you can use these nesachim. The love. V'imlav lanu yipaslu belina. V'imlanu yipaslu belina. But if it's already the next day, if the other option is don't use them. If you didn't use them overnight, then it's lina, it's nosar, and you can't use it anymore. Ziri says yes, the libations become kadosh. But only when the shechita takes place. My kama. In the Mishnah, we've been saying it was there. The klei sharis sounds like.
But we're saying here the nepasim are part of the lina, the Yisro belina as well. Because im lav, right? When he says im lav, is yakribo imo im lav yifsalu belina. Is that referring to the nesachim?
Yes, that's right. Like
So
if you don't have some other way to use it, look, if you don't have a carbon for these nesachim, you can't bring nesachim by themselves, right? That's not a procedure, right? That there isn't a procedure for that. So you're stuck. On the one hand, it's already kadosh, on the other hand, you can't put it on the mizbeach. So what do you do? If you leave them overnight, then it becomes puzzle anyway, and then you can discard them, however the proper way was to discard them.
generally, I thought we talked about Lena in reference to the korban, right? You can't
Yeah,
eat the meat.
correct. That's yeah, but it's also the case that something that in the Mishkan that was left overnight without its being used or whatever being done, um, that's called lina as well.
So they pour it down the drain then, basically.
I think so. Yeah, there was probably some procedure what you do with it, but not on the mizbeach for sure.
And even if they, okay, so it wouldn't matter if it was sealed or not sealed, as long as
Right,
it
right.
was in the Beit HaMikdash, you didn't use the nisachim, they have to be discarded. You can't use them after a day.
That's correct. Correct. Okay, so Amar Ziri, and the Nesachim miskadshin el b'shchitas hazevach. When do the Nesachim, the libations, become kadosh? When the shchita takes place. My tama, Amar Kra zevach u'nesachim, because the Torah links them zevach u'nesachim. When does
Very
it become
yom.
nesachim? When it's linked to the zevach. But we have the Mishnah on Sachim Shekachu B'Kliv, and it says Al Chassul. But our Mishnah said that when they become kadosh by being in the Kli Sharis. Im Yeshav Achacher Yikrivim Ovim Lanu Yipaslu Belina. So our Mishnah seemed to say, "My lavdi pasel b'shchita." Are we talking about where the what happened to the carbon? It became pasel right away when you did the shchita. Um, so. Um, so why does the Mishnah say that they become kadosh by being in the klisharis? Where it says lo the apostle bizrika. No, because the shechita took place already. But the nesachim are not yet kadosh if they haven't gone into the klisharis. When does the klisharis make them kadosh? Only if the shechita has been done already. Okay, so that makes sense. Come on now. According to who is this? Rabbi says that there's two things. If something requires two conditions, then that to become a to become kadosh. Um, Malin Zebulozah, either one of them can make a kadosh. So Gemara says no. I feel but our logic implied that no, you need both, right? The kli sharis by itself is not effective without the shita. So Gemara answers, I feel Rabbi Shimon. You could even say Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, who the Gemara didn't tell us, but that's the who argues with Rabbi that says that they both required. What happened here? You caught the blood in a cup and it spilled on the ground, so you couldn't do this rika at all. Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, Sofala, Kavase Dovua. Rabbi Lazar holds like his father, Rabbi Shimon. Diamar Kol Ha'omed Lizro Kazarak Dami. He says once it's ready for Zrika, we consider it like the Zrika has been done already. So since the blood was ready, the Nesachim do become kadosh, and then they can be invalidated by Lina. Amar Mar, we said before, if there's another korban that needs nesachim, you can use these nesachim. Amar Rav Chisda, but then Rav Chisda say, Shemen Shifri Shalushum Min Chazeh, Pasul Shumin Chacheres, that if you designated, now this is not the same as the nesachim, but this is oil, so if you designated oil for one mincha, that's it. If it can only be used for that mincha. If some mishap occurred and you want to use it for a different mincha, can't do it. So why don't you say the same thing about nesachim? Because there's like a stipulation by the court that the kedusha is conditional, right? That there's like a predetermination. Really, if there was no statement or intention, and you had these nesachim for you designated them for one carbon, it has to be with that carbon. But the designation is assumed to be or deemed to be conditional. That okay, if we end up doing it for this carbon, that's what I want. But if not, for whatever reason, then I want it to apply to a different carbon. So that's the original intent. So that's how it works.
But they're not prepared simultaneously, right? One that does the shechita. I'm trying to
Yeah, you
medamyan that situation. They brings in the nesachim. He gets them ready. I guess they put them in a kli as well, kli, and then and then they do the shech the animal, and then there's the halicha. What do you call
yeah.
halacha and the zrika and the kibbutz dam. But I mean, and not. I don't think they're doing them simultaneously, right? You've got the nesachim, they're ready, or the shechita, and you go back and forth. What is the actual process in which so that they are coordinated one with the other, right? They're not exactly the same moment, unless you've got two people in shutfim doing this together, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
it doesn't have to be at the same moment. It could be a different person, right? It could be. Um, all we're saying is that the designation of these nesachim to this carbon is deemed to be conditional. That if it works out, then great. But if not, my original designation is not for this carbon.
so how long can it? So he prepares in Nesachim and they're sitting in a cliche an hour, 2 hours a day. I mean, I guess a day is the is
Yeah,
the, is the
that's
limit, right?
fine.
After a day, then
Right,
they have to discard
right.
it.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be simultaneous, clearly. Okay. But the Gemara says Yihachi Shemen Nami. Okay, if you can do that with the Nesachim, why can't you do it with the Shemen? Why do you say that the Shemen is stuck with the original with the original with the original carbon? Shemen Gufa the Mincha, because that's part of the actual mincha. That gets mixed directly with the flour. It's not accompanying the flour, it's part of the mincha. So therefore it has a different rule. Velisnu aland and nipkul chulin. Okay, so why don't you say if you're saying the court is going to deem this to be the case, that this is deems this your intention, so let the deeming be that if they don't need, they become chulin again, and then you could use them, then you could reconsecrate them for a different mincha. So our answer is Gzera Shamayomru Motzim Mikli Sharis L'chol, because then people will see, oh, in this case you took that oil, it was kadosh, you made it chulin again. Like they'll think that that's okay to do that, but it's not. So Gemara says Hashaname Zera Shama Yomru Nechasim Shifrishal L'Shum Zavach Zek Sher L'Shum Zavach Acher. Okay, if that's what you're worried about, so don't deem anything because people will say, oh, it looks like you can use nesachim from one animal for a different animal. So our answer is no. Hatane Matisya ben Yehuda. Kigon Shaya Zevach Zavuach B'Yosha. There was another carbon that was already slaughtered at that time. So it's not obvious. It's not like you're making a big show of removing the Nesachim, right? Putting them on the shelf, right? It's like right away you use them for different things. So nobody is gonna know. Nobody's going to know that that this monkey business was, or suspect the monkey business was going on. So okay, so
So
what's
he
the
doesn't
rule?
have to designate it as long as there's another carbon in the area. He could use it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess then you designate it for that carbon. I say, okay, I have these in Sachem, I'll use it for this carbon, and you do it. But the Gemara says, well, wait a minute. What if there is no other carbon that's ready for Nesachim just then? Um, so then Nipsal Belina. So then do you say that you can't apply it to another carbon that comes along later in the day? You have to leave it overnight. Adatani Seifa Im Lanu Yipasal Belina, since the Seifa says if they happen to become if they stayed overnight, then they become possible. You can say the distinction is as follows. When do we say that you can reuse the nesachim? Shai says will be able to show if there's another carbon waiting right away to use it. Will be able to show but if there's no other carbon, then you can't do it. So like the language of the Mishnah doesn't support this idea.
So that was
Um,
my question before. How long can these this thing sit on the side? I mean, we
um,
seem to say, oh, the whole day, as long as it didn't pass the whole day, you could the nesachim could be used anytime during the day, whenever a korban becomes available.
okay.
I mean, that was my question before, and that's what I gathered from what you were sort of answering that I thought that as long as you could keep it to put it aside for the whole day, basically.
Yeah. Right. Um, but now we're saying no, that um, Now we're trying to advance the idea that that you can only do this if you can do it right away, but you can't put it aside for later in the day. All right, that's where the Gemara is trying to go now, but we haven't ended up yet. So the Gemara says, that's what the Mishnah means. When do we allow this? When there's what can be used right away. If you can't use it right away, then it becomes puzzle. Okay, so what we assumed before, what the Gemara had assumed before, it's now rejecting, right? Like you said, like you can't just leave it around all day. In fact, if you can't use it right away, then it becomes puzzle. Okay,
So,
so we're rejecting what we said before.
so what's right away? 2 minutes, an hour, 30 minutes? What do we mean by right away?
Sounds like from the Lashon sounds zevach savuach, but it's already been shechted. Okay, and now you're looking around for the Nesachim. Oh, here are Nesachim that didn't get used. I'll use those. But if you have to wait for Shechita, for a new Shechita, then that's no good. Then you can't reuse it. That's what it sounds like from the way the Gemara presents it.
If you got a line of parim, parot waiting, and they shech one, they shech another, people bringing their korban, is that right away, or is that already too late because the animal is not already shechted, not ready to go?
Not sure I understand the question.
Well, let's say something you have an animal and they shech, but someone they didn't use the nesachim for whatever reason. Now there's another animal person waiting in line with the
Uh-huh.
next one. There's a whole line of it. So is right away means the animal has to be ready, done, or can it be 6 minutes later when the person behind him has another animal ready to
Oh,
go?
okay. So I don't know. I mean, it sounds like from the lashon of the of the Gemara that zevach zavuach b'osashah that was already undergone shechita. You could make an argument that maybe if you could do it right away. I don't know, but that's not doesn't seem to be what the Gemara said. Um, so now, okay, so where are we now?
Umi the Rabbi Shimon.
Yeah. Obviously, Rabbi Shimon, Lev Beis Nisim Masna Aleim. Does Rabbi Shimon actually agree with this idea that the Beis Din deems his intention to be the way we want them to be? V'hamar Rav Amram, Rav Yitzchak, Rav Yochanan. Ravidi said, Tamidin Shelo Husrichu L'Tzibur. You have a carbon tamid that didn't end up being needed. So you bought extra lambs in the marketplace. You didn't need all of them, right? You bought extra in case they become puzzle, and now you've got they didn't not, nobody became puzzle, and so now you've got these things that were bought for a tamid. Well, Rabbi Shimon ein niftin tamimim. According to Rabbi Shimon, you can't redeem them as long as they still are unblemished. But the rabbis say that they can be redeemed. They can go back to Chulin because the same idea, lay based in Masnalayim, because when you bought them, your intention is deemed to be, I'm buying this extra lamb in case, I need it, but if I don't need it, then I'm not buying it for the mikdash. I'm not designating it for the mikdash. So but Rabbi Shimon says, "Ein niftim tamimim." Rabbi Shimon, he doesn't buy this in the case of the extra lambs for the tamid. He doesn't buy the slave based in masna lamb that the based in can deem his intention to be whatever. Shani Hafsam Score says, no, that's different. The case of the Tamidim, the Islahu Takanta Beriya, because they can't, you have another way out. Your other way out is let them develop a mum, let them graze till they develop a mum, and then it's okay to make them not kadosh. Okay. Next Mishnah. Vlad Toda. You have a utumurasa. You have the calf of a Toda. So you've designated it as a Toda, and then it gives birth, right? So what's the story with that? Or if you do a Tamura, if you try to exchange, so the Torah says both of them now become Kadosh. Hifrish Toda v'avda v'hifrish acheres tachteha, or if you lost your Toda, and then you designated a replacement one, and then you found the first one, so you've got extra Todas basically in all these cases, then you can bring it as a korban without the lechem. without the bread. Shenemar ve'ikriv al zevach hatoda, hatoda tu'una lechem. The toda requires the bread. But replacement ones or extra ones that come along in its wake don't need the bread. Tanarabanan, Mao Omer Toda Yakriv. Why does it say? The Torah says Imal Toda Yakriv when it describes the procedure for the Toda. It says if you do a carbon Toda, Minayin. Lemafrish Todasa v'Avda v'Hifrish Acheres Tachtea v'Nimtzis Rishona v'Rishtein Omdos. If you have this case where one got lost and you designated the second one, and then you found the first one, you can choose either one to do the toda with the lechem. You have to do the toda, meaning I think both of them are called a toda, so you could do either one. Maybe you need to do both of them with the lechem. It uses a singular. You could just say yakriv, but yakrivenu says like just that one requires the lechem. Echad lo shnaim, just one. Achar shariba hakosuv amiyeh. So now that the Torah included, it like it was expansive and then limiting. Minayin l'rabos v'lados v'chalifos v'furas lachrava. How do you know that rule includes all these other cases of where you have an extra toda? Lomar im al toda. If you have a toda, because this case doesn't always happen, so that indicates the Torah is indicating to you that in a unusual case, it's still this is the rule. Maybe you need bread for both of them. Toda tuna lechem, only the toda needs lechem, the one that comes to the toda, and not the other ones. One second. Yeah, Shalach le Shalach Rabbi Chanina Mishmeid Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Chanina sent the following: Lo Shalach Kapara. That's only if the if you've already achieved kapara through the original toda. Avalifnei kapara, if you found the new animal before the kapara tuning lechem, then both of them need bread. So Havibar Rama says, "Aye, what are you talking about? Which one are you talking about? The original or the replacement?" Ilema chalife toda schova. If you want to say, we're talking about the replacement of the like a toda that you have to bring. We have this law taught about both of those. So we must be talking about a voluntary one. Ella chlife toda nadav. We must be talking about a voluntary toda. Bein lifnei kapar, bein lacha kapar, tunas lechem. There, the rule is that whether you do the replacement before or after kapara, it still requires lechem marba betodosu, and then because you're just basically doing another toda, right? So there's no problem with bringing more bread, right? If it's a chova and there's a specific number of specific whatever that you have to bring, you have to bring one toda and 40 loaves of bread. If you have a second toda, there's no rule there that applies. But if it's a voluntary one, each one is voluntary, and you can bring as many times as you want. Ella avlad toda.
What do you mean? There's no rule. What do you mean?
There's no rule that says that you can't bring additional bread for this toda offering. If it's a chova, if it's prescribed by the Torah, you have to bring a toda. That means you have to bring exactly 40 loaves of bread. You can't bring 80 loaves of bread. Now you have a problem that you've got two animals. Okay, so the rule is you have to slaughter this animal because it was designated as a toda, even though it's a toda, a tzibur, an obligatory one. But nowhere does it say that you also have to bring another 40 loaves of bread, because the 40 loaves of bread never got lost.
So this was a tamura then?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Or replacement?
Yeah, tamura or got lost and found again, or the Vlad Toda, we're lumping them all together. But all of the cases where you have an extra animal, but you don't have extra bread, So you can't bring extra bread unless it's voluntary. If it's voluntary, you can say, "Oh, okay, I'm bringing another toda, and bring so I can bring bread with it."
But haven't we learned somewhere before that if there's a tamura and then you find the animal, the first initial animal, then the second one we don't use or we put it out to pasture, right?
Yeah, so if you can put it out to pasture until it gets a moom, that's one solution.
So why here are would they be sacrificing the second animal, the second toda?
Um, because you have a chiyuv. If you have a chiyuv to bring it already, then you can't just then you'd have to replace it with another one yet, right?
Right, but now he's found the other one. Now he's brought the first one.
Yeah, but this one became kadosh already. So why do you have to sacrifice it? Yeah, that's a good question. Not sure.
Can he redeem it?
No, but yeah, I think you have ask a good question. Why not just let it get a moom and then
But we just said above in the Gemara above that one can redeem something even after it's um designated,
okay,
right?
you're asking a good question. I'm not sure.
So he couldn't redeem this for money and then donate the
Oh
money.
no, no, oh, you can no. When you redeem it, it doesn't work. Like that's the whole problem of of trying to exchange it. That it doesn't work. But both of them become kadosh.
He can't redeem it. So
No, if you can, but it doesn't buy your way out of the first one. Like
the
that's the
first one,
whole.
fine, I understand it, but I'm talking about the second one.
No, that's the whole thing of Tamura, right? That you can't exchange, you can't redeem a kadosh animal, and if you try to do it, then guess what? Now you have two kadosh animals.
Wait, wait a second. Well, why do you say you have two kadosh? The animals, both of them were kadosh in the first place. So if redeems one of them,
But yeah,
so
I'm not sure
you
you
want to
actually,
say nothing changes? There's no way to redeem it?
right? You
So
can't buy an animal out of kedusha,
so what were
unless
we
it gets a
talking?
moon or something.
But earlier we talked about redeeming the animal, right? Where was it? Just I don't know if.
Yeah, that's how you end up with an extra carbon because you tried to redeem it, and now they're both kadosh. That's one of the scenarios of having an extra one.
But wait a second. If the animal is kadosh, and you want to redeem something that's kadosh, I mean, it was kadosh in the first place. What's the point of redeeming? If you're saying that
There
it's
is exactly the point that it doesn't work. The Torah's telling you, good luck with that. Nice try, but you should just shot yourself in the foot.
so, then what are the situations where one can redeem something? Because that does
It
exist.
develops a mum.
Oh, only if it develops a mum.
Yeah,
But if it develops a mum, it's a puzzle.
right.
That's all right. So you need to redeem it then?
Yeah, you still have to buy it, I guess it still belongs to the Mikdash. So now it becomes a financial transaction.
Just seemed that there are a lot of there are a lot of topics that go by pretty quickly, but it seems that there are situations where one can redeem something, and even though it doesn't develop them, I thought I remembered that, but perhaps not. That there is a mechanism to redeem something that has been donated, and it does. Isn't that the case? Even if before the animal develops a mum, isn't there a mechanism to redeem something that has been donated?
Not sure what you mean. Not to my
Well, if
knowledge.
someone donated by mistake, doesn't want to, whatever, and he wants to redeem it, and we talk about poda the donation, right? Isn't there a mechanism for that? And before without the a mum in the animal, I thought that one can redeem things from from. See, we talk about Meiser Shake,
Okay, so actually we're talking about Tamura, which is exchanging.
right?
So maybe yes. So you know what? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so I misstated. Yeah. Um, there are cases where you can by adding on a fifth, right?
Right, exactly. So you have a chomesh. Uh,
Uh,
I think
okay, but we're not talking about that case. So the Gemara here is talking about a case of Tamura, where you try to just exchange. Okay, can't use this animal. I'll use this animal instead. That doesn't work.
right, okay. So
Okay, good question. Okay, so Rav Amram answers. El Vlad Toda Chova. So Rabbi Yochanan must be talking about a mandatory Toda. Lifnei Kapara Ton Lechem, before Kapara, before you have the Zrika Saddam, with the original, it needs bread. Lacha Kapara Ein Ton Lechem. Then the so if like let's say you have the case of the mother and the child, right? So if you do the child, which is the extra one, before the mother, then it needs bread. But once the original Toda, the mother, has been sacrificed, and then you want to do you come to do the Vlad, the child, then it doesn't need bread. My Kamashwan, what's he telling us? The Kasavar, Rabbi Yochanan, Adam miskaper b'shvach hekdesh, that you can get kapara with with like something that hekdesh invested in and got a return. Like this child of the Torah. Haviba name Abaye ki hagavna, and Abaye came to the same conclusion. Each Nami, we have a similar statement. Amar Yitzchak Bar Yosef Amar Yochanan Chilufei Toda Nadava, the replacement of a voluntary Toda, Bein Lifnei Kapara, Bein Lacha Kapara, Tuna Lachem. Whether you sacrifice it before or after the original Kapara, it requires bread. Marba b'todasu, because it's voluntary, so you bring another Toda, you bring bread with it. Vlad Toda Nadava, but in the case of the offspring, the calf of a toda, voluntary toda. Bein lifnei kapara, bein lacha kapara, ein ton lachem. No matter when you sacrifice it, before the mother, after the mother, it doesn't require bread. Mosar de toda, because that's a residual toda, so it's not a real toda. It doesn't have the same rules as a toda. It doesn't need the bread. Vlad toda chava. What about a mandatory toda that has a child? Lifnei kapara tuni lechem. If you sacrifice the vlad first, so kapara hasn't yet been achieved, then you need lechem. Lachar kapara ain't tuni lechem, but after kapara, then it doesn't require bread. Okay, so there's a kind of a fine distinction. It's not entirely clear to me, why that would be the case, but that's the rule.
isn't the whole
And
process of bringing the korban to achieve kapara, isn't that, I mean, right?
yes,
Isn't that one of isn't that
yeah, right,
one of the goals? I mean, you bring the korban for kapara. A person did a chet or whatever. I mean, not a shlamim, but this is the so I'm not. I don't fully understand the idea of lifnei kapara or lachar kapara. If he's bringing this korban to achieve kapara, and the lechem has to be an integral part of the korban, what difference does it
right.
make before or after kapara? Isn't that the whole essence of the process, kapara?
Right. So that is exactly the point, I think, that if you brought this child, the child, the calf, right, then you haven't achieved kapara yet. So when you bring the calf, guess what? You have to bring the lechem. But if you've already brought the mother and the lechem for the mother, and now you come to bring the child, you've already achieved kapara. So that's why you don't have to add on the lechem. But you're going to say, well, you still have to do the calf, right? So yeah, that's why I don't. It's not entirely clear to me how this works
Why is he bringing the calf?
because it's kadosh.
Oh, because they already made it kadosh.
Yeah, because it came out of the mother that was kadosh, so it's kadosh.
So wait a second. So any
It's designated as a toda. The mother was designated as a toda, so the
and
offspring
she was
also.
pregnant.
Yeah,
So the rule is anytime that we designate a pregnant
right. Or
animal,
became pregnant after. It doesn't matter.
became pregnant after what? After the
After,
designation.
yeah,
So so then the Vlad is automatically Kadosh because the mother was.
Yeah. Right.
And if the but it has this designation has to occur while the mother or well before no, wait a second. Let me see if I can. So the designation has to occur while, as you're saying, while the mother was pregnant, or became pregnant later and hadn't been sacrificed yet.
Right.
So if they sacrificed the mother before she came, then okay, it's a non-issue
Yeah.
before she became pregnant.
Or before she gave birth.
Uh, I guess before she gave birth. Once she gave birth, then the Vlad would not be included. Well, no, it still would be included if the
Yes.
mother was. I'm trying to
Right.
get this sorted out here, but uh, so that's an automatic. The Vlad is also Kadosh.
Yes.
I mean, it reminds me of an old argument. I mean, I remember learning this years ago. This
Mhm.
discussion of the Gemara and Ketubot and other places is whether Vlad Yerach Imo or Vlad Eno Yerach Imo.
Right. So that's regarding kashrus if
Right.
you slaughter a pregnant cow. But here you're not trying to eat it. It's a question of does it, it's going on the mizbeach. Um,
I don't know if that was only eating it, but I don't know. That has many other implications.
yes. Okay. Very good.
We're stopping here.
Stopping here.
And you're traveling, right?
No, I'll be here.
You're here. You're not going to Israel.
I'm not going to Israel.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Have a good day.
Chag Sameach.
Like some